Hello, this is Lisa Russick with the podcast We Are All Psychic, and today we have a really cool guest, and I don't know anything about him whatsoever. His name is James. And James, would you like to say hello?
Hey, Lisa, thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you are welcome. I'm really glad you're here, and I have a question for you right away. Do you think we're all psychic?
Wow, you like hit me with that question right away. Are we all psychic? Man, I've never been asked that question before. I think probably we are. I think probably for the most of us, we just are so out of touch, maybe with that skill. That's what I think, but I'm
Still,
not sure. I could be swayed.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. That's a good answer. I could be too. I mean, I'm not saying I can't change my mind. I might someday decide I'm not psychic. I don't know, and it could happen. You never know, or maybe I'll lose the ability. Maybe, maybe. You never
I
know.
mean, there's some crazy studies out there. I'm sure you've read the the experiment that Heart Math Institute did about intuition,
Mm-mm.
where so it's through. I mean, this is psychic ability just below our conscious level. So
Yeah.
what the experiment did was people would sit in front of a computer screen, and then a light would go off, and it's just a black screen, and then they had to click the mouse. So they clicked the mouse, which meant that in 5 seconds the computer was going to randomly select an image to show you. Now, the image was either like a car crash or a snake or a rabbit or a kitten, something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Well, depending on what you're going to see, it's going to either make your heart rate go up or not
Before they
make it
saw
go up.
the image, they reacted? Is that what the one you're talking about?
Yeah. So what happened was when they tracked their heart rate, the heart rate went down before a scary image, but the heart rate went down before the computer even selected the image. So it
That's
was like the
like
heart knew the future, and nobody's been able to explain that. It's just like,
is
here's this study.
magic. That's just magic.
So,
That.
yeah,
Yeah. I think somebody's gonna explain it someday. They're trying to anyway. I think they
for
are.
sure. Well,
Will.
the heart has neurons, and even the heart sent the message to the brain. It wasn't the brain, it was the heart. So, if you take a look at that, of course, that
Oh,
would be
we
an example
have
of
our
being
yeah.
psychic.
And we're finding out that the brain cells are all over everything in our body, especially our guts. In our gutsy wutsies, listeners. So you're psychic in your gut for a reason. Your
Yeah,
the guts have tons. It gets where like most of your serotonin is made, is what I just read a few days ago, and I was like, really, and I just read that in some random Google article, and I was just like, what they do, and they have been finding the stuff out about a lot of the mood types medications. They are the same as stomach medications, and a lot of the mood stabilizer medications are the same as like seizure medications. So, and all this stuff works in the gut. It's really strange that they're finding this stuff out, but through the AI, going through the genome and pulling things out. It's really, I love this, like health and AI and all this medicine stuff coming out right now is very exciting, but that's not what this podcast is about. Listeners and watchers, this is a video on Spotify and YouTube, and I would love to let you know I do know something about James. He is an author. And would you like to tell them about your book?
yeah. My new book just came out. It's titled "The Call to Climb." For those of you who are watching, it looks a little bit like this, and this was 13 years in the making. But it's a fable. Basically, it's a story of someone who stumbles into a remote village in the Bolivian Andes, and they're lost, and they find out that this village has actually been expecting them, because in this village there's this mountain that is sort of this mystical place that calls you to climb when you need to have a conversation with your soul, but you've been avoiding that appointment. And so the main character stumbles into this village, finds out they've been called to climb, and as they climb, it's really about reawakening their connection to their soul, which they have cut off, for the sake of people pleasing, for the sake of doing what they think they should. And the soul reminds them of who they truly are. So that's what the book's about. It's a story, and like I said, it took a didn't take a long time to write, but it was in my mind for about 13 years.
Wow. Yes, that's the truth. It can take a week to write a book. And it was a Jack Kerouac went on the road. Is that the one who did On the Road? Was it Jack Kerouac who wrote On the Road? I don't know, but he went on the road for 8 years and wrote the book in 2 weeks or something. 13 is like that. You thought about it for 13 years and just it's ready.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all
It's like it's percolating, right? It's like It's like a dish you've been stirring all day, and then finally, everybody eats it in 5 minutes. So
Exactly, yeah. So I love this this means I don't know why this happened, but when you were just starting to talk about the book, I started smelling campfires. So I was wondering, do they have a lot of campfires on their trip climbing this mountain? I just smelled them and I was like, as that happened, I had an image of like people climbing this. I just had this image of your book, kind of. I don't know if they
there's
have
a
fires, but I smelled them really strong. I have that, it's clear smellience. I kind of get that sometimes. That's what I call
there's
it.
a couple fires in there for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. I gotta get
yeah.
the book. Tell us like tell the listeners and watchers more about it. Like tell them why it took 13 years and
So
something to do with being on the fence.
yeah, I mean, a lot of this book comes out of my story. I mean, I grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I was this shy, introverted kid, and
You
when
were
I grad
shy.
oh yeah,
I
for sure. This
never
shy, introverted kid. I was the only redhead in my whole town, which in a
I
in
love
a,
her. Oh,
makes you like the minority. And yeah, but it was a great place to grow up for sure, close to nature. But I
they
didn't come out of
attention. They do. They will, especially
yeah.
redheads. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't come out of high school as the most confident person with all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I, started my career, and lo and behold, my career would involve being on stage and speaking a lot, and so I had to get over those fears. So I did. I was
Uh,
working in the not-for-profit sector, and maybe 10 years in, I started to just feel like unhappy
yeah.
and wondering like, why am I unhappy? Like everyone looks at my job, thinks like, you're so lucky you get to do this, and I'm like, yeah, of course. But I'd be driving home and thinking, what's wrong with me that I am not happy? And little did I know then, but those whispers of the soul, right? Trying to get your attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't stop to listen. It was like, okay, obviously the problem is me, so I just gotta bear down, push harder. And so that's what I continued to do. So eventually what happened was I just crashed and burned, like from a
Yeah.
body perspective. I got really sick. I'm generally a healthy guy. I got really sick and I couldn't I couldn't even get out of bed. And they did all these tests. They thought I had lupus, but after all the tests, they're like, nope, you're fine. You're
Yeah.
totally fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine. Like something's broken. And it took me about 3 months to just get back into regular life. And I thought, okay, you did something wrong. Like this is the body is like rebelling. And that's when I stumbled across a book by Dr. James Hollis. He's a Jungian psychoanalyst, and the book's called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. And in there, he talks about, I mean, it's a very Jungian concept that the soul longs to have a conversation with you, but we avoid that appointment because, in a sense, we're just living the life we've been conditioned to live, right? That our parents wanted us to live, and our high school wanted us to live, and we got the law degree whether we wanted it or not, and that's what we're doing. But then the soul comes in a few years after and tries to get our attention,
Yes.
and that's the appointment I had avoided. But anyways, in his book, that really spoke to me, that concept, and it just stuck with me. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to actually write that in a story form where someone actually was summoned to some place where they had to have the conversation with their soul? And I've climbed mountains in Bolivia as well. So that became the setting for the story. But really, this story emanated out of my own experience of, not listening to the inner life and just trucking on, and the cost that plays.
Please, what is that cost? What do you think?
It can be health. It can be sacrificed dreams. It can be that the world pays a price also when
Yes.
when you're not in line with your soul, because
Good point.
yeah, I view it as like everyone is unique. Like you're a historical event that's only happened once. It'll never happen again.
Yourself
Uh,
that way, listeners. Like
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even
empathy.
the fact that you've got fingerprints, right? Like nobody's got the same fingerprints. Even identical twins have different fingerprints. Like we all have this thing to bring to the world. Sort of like we all have a song to play that no one else can play. Only you can play it. And if you don't play it, the world doesn't get to hear it, and you don't get to play it. And the soul is a bit like an acorn, the seed of an oak tree, right? That it just wants to express itself to become an oak, and it's not worried about what people think. It's not worried about, am I going to fail? is this gonna,
But it does.
make me look good? Yeah, it's just I want to become something. And the soul is like that. It wants to express itself through you, but often that's scary business because it means going against the tribe sometimes. It means someone not being excited about your path, could even be your parents. It means going a lot of times trailblazing where no one's gone before because it's your path. And that's a scary thing. It's really scary for us to leave
Unknown
the
is scary.
wide path.
And it's so frustrating that the soul is the unknown, isn't it, in our culture? That the
Yeah.
soul is so unexplored in our culture, except in our churches, and otherwise, some people talk about it in the bar, maybe, but it's not talked about much. People don't talk about their souls. It's a mystery to us what our soul is. Some people think there isn't a soul, or some people don't have souls, or there's a debate if animals have souls. It's like then if there is a debate, it's like, do animals have souls? You say do rocks have souls? What is a soul? You can hear all these things, but what you're saying, I just love though. Because it gives all of us our own special unique. I really think like we're here to evolve our souls to our most unique form. Like we come back and reincarnate. That's my ideal right now that's what I think. And so I'm coming into this life and I am here to make this podcast maybe, and that's what I did. But I do have this little feeling right about going on now that I feel kind of what you talked about in the beginning about talking about your book. I feel a little like how you felt 13 years ago because I'm happy in my life, but there is something missing and I don't know what it is because I don't
Mhm.
feel that sprinkle that I used to feel about life. I have gone through some hard times in the last few years, but should be over it by now. I don't know. You shouldn't nail down something like healing and grief, but I shouldn't. But I would like to know what do well, give us a little teaser for in your book. What do some of your characters discover on the mountain? What do they find?
Yeah, the main character Riley, well, what they discover first of all is just how out of tune they are with what the soul has desired. They just haven't given it space, right? The soul does want to speak, but sometimes it's scary to sit down and listen to what it says. And this is one of the reasons, Lisa, people have a difficult time answering the question, "What do you want?" And like, what do you want? And people will be like, "What do you mean? What do I want? Like, what are my goals? Or like, what do I? No, what do you want? Like, what do you want?" And
Know what I want. I can't have it though. I
sometimes people, yeah, sometimes we want something that seems like we can't get. Sometimes we don't know what we want because we don't know ourselves well enough.
think I feel like I know myself pretty well, but I change a lot really fast. And I do have a lot of health issues, so that kind of like slams me down when it hits me hard. As far as being productive and living an ordinary life, I can't because of the health issues. Um, I'm used to it now. So it's just what it is. And I just keep working on getting better and finding ways to get healthier. Um, and sometimes I just complain and cry. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
hey, mom, I'm sick. Why did you make me sick? I'm just kidding.
Well, back to your comment about how you're like, I've done a lot of things. I don't know exactly what I want to do next. And so here's the thing about the soul and also our society's view of purpose, right? So that everyone gets on this purpose train. Like, I got to find my purpose in life. And what
Feels
people confuse is they think like my purpose is some vocation or it's like going to Africa and building schools or digging wells or something. It's very purposeful. What's my purpose? But looking for your purpose like that is a little bit like, to me, looking for your soulmate, thinking there's just only this one person out there. So I just don't believe that, right? Because that puts so much pressure on that. Your purpose really is to bring that expression of you, of the soul to the world, right?
I
It's to be that most authentic, right? To step into that version of you. Now, what you're going to do with that, there's probably 1,000 things you could do,
yes.
right? Now, this is good news for some and not good news for others because then they're paralyzed by choice. But here's the
Yeah.
thing, it's like, let's go back to the acorn for a moment. If you ask an acorn, what do you want? It's like, well, I'm going to become an oak tree. Well, it's talking about what it's going to
It-
become.
do. Yeah.
Now, it's gonna do a lot of things, right? Like, it's gonna provide shade, home for animals, stop erosion, all these things, but those are byproducts of who it is becoming. The same with us, right? Is as we focus on who we're becoming, what we do, there's a ton of things we might do. And I don't believe that there's just one path vocationally. So, for example, you started this podcast, you've been doing a great job with that, you've been consistent with it. But that doesn't mean that you're always going to be doing this. At some point, the soul might be like, okay, you know what? We did that. We served in that way. We
Yeah,
grew,
that's
and
done.
now we're expanding into something else. But
Yeah.
so many people, especially creative and artistic people, they find it so hard to leave a path because they think, but 2 years ago I was like, this is it. This is my calling. Well, okay, it was one of your callings in that moment, but it doesn't mean that
Yeah, I had a
it's
calling.
your calling forever.
The other people I've heard do that. I've never really felt like, except for writing, I really felt like that was a calling because I did it all my life, and music, because when I understood music, I had like an aha moment where music just made sense. It was literally like, oh, like it makes sense. And all of a sudden, I was like, play everything. I wrote a song. The first, then when that happened, I didn't understand music, and then I just did. It's the best way I can put it. And I wrote a song. I was like, "Oh, this is easy. It's fun." And I did think that was my life purpose, but I didn't do it all my life. I still do it, but it's not, it's just part of my life. It's more like part of my life. It's part of me. It's like a hobby. It's just part of what I am happy about. It's not something I want to make a career out of anymore, like I did when I was younger. I don't like performing. So,
Yeah, right. You enjoyed it, and you think this
and
is
I
one
like
of the challenges. We find something we like, and then society, parents, they start to push us into
money.
that. Like, okay, you love singing as a kid, and you're good at it, and then it's all this pressure is like, well, become a singer. But no, maybe you don't want to become a singer. You just like to sing in the house, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like sports, and kids good at baseball, and then there's this track. Like, okay, you gotta take this up to all these levels. Well, for some kids, sure, but for other kids, no. What's wrong with them just being great at baseball, but not wanting it to be a career?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, and in the South, a lot of men face that if they're good at sports. I come from Alabama mainly. I lived in Alabama mostly in my life. I lived in Phoenix for a little while, and then now I live in Tennessee. But Alabama men, if they're good at football as a kid, wow, their life is football. Unless they have, I mean, that is gonna happen to them usually. I mean, yeah, he will be playing football for until he dies, in Alabama if you are good at football. So, because it's just such a big sport there, it's just a big deal there. Um, and it's like how a lot of kids come from nothing and get to go to school, and like a lot of them get into schools they never would have gone to college if they didn't play ball, or something like that. And I've watched that happen there, but that's just very highly valued in that state for some reason. I don't know. I wish psychic were. I might still be there if it'll never be there, I don't think. But you never know. We'll hope for it. So I want to ask, where can the listeners and watchers find you when your book?
If you want information about my book, you would go to a website, iwillclimb.com, iwillclimb.com, because that's the question that is put out to the main character when they realize that they've been called to climb this mountain to have this conversation with their soul. They're resistant, and they're like, there's no way this is happening. Like, this is so weird. Like, I'm not doing that. But eventually they start to realize, wait, all these things are lining up, and then they're like, okay, I will climb. So go to iwillclimb.com. That's where you can find out about the book. And of course, you can find out some stuff about me there.
Okay, sounds good. And you found out a little bit today, I guess. And so did I. Just kidding. I do want to ask you, and I would like to thank my sponsor, Everclear. Everclear is an advice app and website where you can get advice from psychics and empaths and get the clarity you need to create the life you deserve. And I am an advisor on Everclear under the name Lisa Ressick. And lastly, I got to get some advice from you. I love what you talked about on this podcast about decision making, where when someone gets to that point where they can own their authentic self and feel comfortable in their skin and be who they want, and then they have to make that choice. What do I do with this? That's kind of where I feel like I'm at. What do I do next? I don't have to do anything next, I don't think. But I kind of feel a drive to. You know what I'm saying? So, the decision thing really catches me because do feel like I would be locked into another 10 years of something if I changed my mind right now about my career or something, you know? So, let's say someone's listening and they're thinking like, gosh, I've just realized I have a hard time making decisions, and that's what's kind of kept me in a hole for a long time right now. They're stuck because they haven't been able to make decisions. Maybe they had some spiritual experiences and it blew their mind. That's why they're listening to this podcast, and they're trying to figure out what happened to them. Um, what would you advise to someone who just figured out they have that problem, that they have a hard time making decisions? That's a huge problem to have. It's hard to make decisions when you find out you don't if you learn that you don't make decisions well, that's something you can work on, right? So, what would you say to someone to work on that and fear of making a decision and making the wrong one? Because that's what it feels like it's about, you know?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. There's a difference between when you can't make a decision because you don't know what you want to do next, right? Like, I'm not sure what I want to do next. Okay, well then you're still in exploration mode, and look at the breadcrumbs in your life and look back at the past and what catches your heart, that kind of thing. So you need more data, right? You need more data, just like in business. You need data to make the decisions. Well, you need more data. But once you start to feel like, okay, how do I could go this way, I could go this way. This is where you want to start drilling down to what really is, I call it your spiritual compass. Like, what are the things that are most important to you that you create commitments over, right? So I have these 7 commitments in my life. And so anytime there's a big decision, I'm going to run it through one of these commitments. Like, is this line up with one of my commitments? And earlier I said, you want to be able to answer the question, what do we want? Well, even sometimes we can think, well, I want this, but sometimes we have to actually look at it a little bit closer to find out if it's the ego that's actually wanting that or truly the soul. And I'll give you an example. For a lot of my life, I made decisions based on what's going to make me the most money, what's going to be more profitable. And so much of that is just following in the footsteps of my father, whereas my mom would be more like, it's not about what maximizes the money, it's about what fulfills you.
Yeah.
And so there's times where I've had these goals, but then I'll give you an example. This one actually comes. This one's in the book as well. So for years, I used to carry this stone around in my pocket, and I had engraved on it $1 million, and I carried it with me everywhere, every day,
That's
through
magic.
TSA, on the plane, didn't matter where, right? But
Magic.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So a couple of years later, though, I am nowhere closer to this goal, and the stone almost felt like a mockery at some point. Well, one day I asked myself, like, why do you want this though? Like, what's this going to get for you besides having $1 million? What's this going to get for you?
What
And
is
I
it
thought,
about? Yeah.
and the answer came was because then I'll feel successful, which meant that I wasn't feeling successful, and the goal was to take away that shame that I was feeling. So it wasn't even about $1 million. So when you start to shine a light from a really non-judgmental place about why do I actually really want this, then you're able to make better decisions to go, oh, okay, it's not that making $1 million is wrong, of course not, but I had the wrong reasons for that goal,
Yeah.
and that makes its way into the book where Riley has a stone in their pocket, and it's totally from my story.
I feel that really hardcore for men in our culture. They are told they have to take care of everybody and themselves. Um, and
I
they're
think,
told in our generation too, in our generation X, it's like really we didn't get a chance to run this place yet. You know? But,
yeah, yeah,
I make that as a little comment here and there. But, I think that, the men were pressured. I watch men my age never get to do what they want. They're talented at rock, their kids make them I mean, their parents make them study chemical engineering or something, and it's not what they wanted, and they ended up doing it, but then they ended up failing out of college, or they did go through it and they're miserable wherever they are now. That they if they it, that's what I've seen. I'm not saying that's how everybody is in their life, but that's just what I've seen from most of the people I went to high school with in my
for
generation.
sure,
You
for
know,
sure. One
but
more
the
thing
ones
about the
who had
decision.
like had families and wanted that, they loved it. They were happy, and that's what as far as the friends I had, the women, if they want, they had careers too. The ones I knew,
Mhm, mhm.
pretty well, and who also had children.
One more thing about the decision I was going to say is that even when we do get these choices that become clear and we feel paralyzed, a lot of times it's actually not about the decision. The challenge is with us. and our lack of confidence.
That's
Because some of the most successful people I've interviewed, CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, they still have this element of risk. Like they mitigate it, they try to get it all down, but at the end of the day, they're going to go with their gut, and they even know it might be the wrong decision, but they're going to make the decision. And if it is the wrong decision, they know they'll be okay as well, and they'll learn, they'll pivot, they'll do what they need to do. So sometimes that's what we've got to realize is we have to have more trust in ourselves, not to make the right decision, but that to make a decision. And if it turns out it's not the right decision, okay, then I'll pivot and I'll actually in some ways be better for it because I'll have learned something I wouldn't have learned. And if you can take that mindset in, that's sort of a growth mindset. If you can take that in, it's going to take the pressure off decisions. Obviously, some decisions are bigger than others. Some decisions are irreversible, and okay, we want to take our time with that. But most decisions are not like that. They might be, should I quit my job? Should I start this company? Should I change companies? Should I start a new product? Should I start a podcast, or should I start a new podcast? You can probably do both. You can probably go both paths, either one, but pick one. And if it's the wrong one, that's okay. You'll be fine, and you'll find your way. That's a good thing when there's two choices and you pick one, you pick the wrong one. Now you know which the right one is.
at least you find out the hard way, which is my favorite way. Or it's the well-traveled path, I would say. Thank you so much for coming on the show, James. I really appreciated this, and you have a lot to say that is just it hits me like how I want to say it. Let's put it that way. You say it the way I would like to say it. So thank you for that. You have a beautiful way of putting things for our listeners and watchers. And I guess lastly, I just want to say again, I appreciate this, and I want to ask if you love our listeners and our watchers. Do you love the listeners and the watchers? Because I do.
I love the listeners and the watchers because that's the only way we're going to make this world better is if we
Right.
all start looking at each other, even if we differ in terms of how we see things. We got to love each other.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, "Hi, brother," with everyone you meet. It's just a basic respect, right? Just human respect is love.
Yeah, but imagine if the whole world was like that. Hey, brother, I give you a big hug. This would be a different place.
Good. I feel really happy. Yeah, I love that. That's a good point, man. You make a lot of good points in this podcast, and thank you for that. And
Thanks, Lisa.
listeners and watchers, I love you. Have a great time wherever you may be, and peace out. Bye.
Bye.